My name is Jeff Morgan. I'm back here once again with Brandon Johnson. It seems like we meet all over the place.
It's a family reunion.
Every single time. So we are out here in Collin County Courthouse, and this is Monday, June the 5th. And I know, Brandon, you've come out here several times for Scott Wedge.
This is the third time I've been here.
Okay, this is the first time I've met him. I just heard about some things through you and through others and so on. One of the things I want to ask you, though, was what are your thoughts here? Because when I went in today, I expected to see worse than what I saw today from the judge. But the judge seemed to be fairly reasonable and fair. Is that something that you think is attributable to court watchers being there?
Absolutely.
So tell me what you first experienced when you first came into the courtroom here.
When I first came here, the judge was very hostile toward Scott. Her demeanor has definitely softened, but we see this quite often where the judge acts differently when they're watched, and it's they're playing a role with the other attorneys.
Right. And the interesting thing about today is that there were two people with media credentials here too, Epoch Times and the Texas Tribune. I know I was here, you were here, a few other people were here. 8 people total were watching as court watchers on behalf of Scott. So I thought that was very interesting in itself.
Absolutely. And I would say that there were 3 media here: Texas Tribune, Epoch Times, and Jeff Morgan Production.
Okay, there we go. I haven't yet to. Yeah, I have to form that, don't I? But you know what? One of the things that I saw that really, really, really bothered me was, there were a couple of things. First off, I was watching the time, and I even turned to you and said, hey, take a look at the timers. The timers were not really being kept accurately, were they?
No, they weren't. And I think it was definitely something to be aware of, because that has been an issue throughout this case, according to Scott. His side did not even get half the time that her side got. But you saw that gamemanship going on, even though it wasn't ever addressed, even by the judge, in today's hearing.
I think what happened, though, at the end, I think they kind of disregarded the timer at the end.
So that's what I mean. It was disregarded because... Yeah. I think they knew, it was a moot point. But right. When it's not, you can definitely see where that could have been an issue they raised. Oh, you're out of time, and
right,
and so you're done, and
So one thing that I've thought of, that I was watching today, that I witnessed, and I was very, very upset about this. Scott's attorney, Ryan Siegel of the Walter Gilbreth law firm, I believe it is, in Dallas, Texas. He really spoke very rudely and curtly. I mean, the way that he treated his client was pretty awful, I thought. One time he basically said, shut up, another time, stop it. And, Scott was there trying to say, bring this up. I want this on the record. From what I gathered today, Ryan has done a pretty poor job in the past of getting things entered into the record. So at what point in time do you have to say, listen, you're my attorney. I want this on the record. He says, shut up, stop it. Did you notice that as well?
I did notice that, but I think there's a few things that you need to be addressed, or that need to be addressed in this. Number one, where Scott is at in this case, getting railroaded, his attorney has been in on it.
Right.
That is my opinion. Okay. And what has happened is what I believe happened is these attorneys and the judge overplayed their hand, because they depend on this fighting to be able to stretch out the litigation for as long as possible.
Right.
And they were able to do that because, and I'll say it, Scott has not, they have let the emotions run and the fighting, just the bickering and the arguing over this little thing, that little thing. And we see that happens a lot. And they want that to happen in order to stretch it out and cause a lot of confusion.
Right.
Where what should have been done all along is what this appellate attorney is doing, which is focusing on very clear, definable, financial aspects is really what she's focusing on.
Right.
I can kind of understand Scott's attorney being frustrated. He has lost all client control. Client control is something attorneys spend a lot of time dealing with. And actually, anyone who works with the general public, you have to maintain client control. And that's reasonable. And that's actually why you hire an attorney, is because they are supposed to handle your affairs when your emotions and your personal interests get in the way of your clear thinking. But what actually ends up happening is they use that in order to exploit you.
Right.
And that is what is taking place. So today was actually not the time for Scott to be bringing up the issues that he wanted brought up. The trial's over. You were merely saving things for appeal, perfecting the appeal, as they may say. I'm not so sure that the way things were handled today that they were perfected. Now, I'm not an attorney. I don't know.
Right.
But I felt like any objections should have been spoken on the record. I also think that, and it's my opinion, but that this was not handled correctly, and I kind of understand the judge's frustration at this point in the situation. However, it's a situation that she created, because together, opposing counsel, Scott's attorney, and the judge have worked in unison to plunder this family.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And when talking with Scott, one of the biggest things that he's concerned about is access to his child. He was telling me how that, for the majority of his child's life, their child's life, he was the primary caregiver. 270 days out of the year, basically, he was the person who was taking care of the child. And now he's at a place where they're taking his memories of his children, they're giving him 50-50, but they're saying that, mom gets to make all of these decisions regarding schooling and things like that, and mom gets to hire a nanny, when Scott says, why can't I be a father? And I think that that's one of the issues that, to me, it seemed like it was frustrating for Scott that never really got dealt with. We saw today they'd had all the property lists and everything else. So much time on this stupid crap, and I'm not saying property is stupid, but I mean so much time on this. But then when it comes down to a child, it's 5 minutes, and where again is the right of first refusal? I mean, if you're going to have your child and then say, but I'm going to have my child stay with a nanny, I think that the child should be able to stay with the father or with the mother. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I've dealt with this as well. I thought first right of refusal was in my decree. Come to find out, they left it out. That's another thing that you can't really depend on. These attorneys, over and over, they'll leave things out.
Right.
They're lazy, they're incompetent, and they're malicious, even to their own clients.
And one of the things that they kept on talking about was the manual, the bar manual, the practice manual, and basically how they took the verbiage from the manual. And so how is it even possible, and how is it excusable that these things should be left out or made perhaps intentionally ambiguous so that we can come back and fight again?
Well, I think it's such a big topic. And it's not really what I think. We have our thoughts about what we've been taught to believe how the court system works, which is not how it works at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's what is and what ought to be. What is everything, or what ought to be is what you're talking about. What really is the courts work on presumptions of law. They are really just. There's only so many ways to cut up the cake.
Right.
And everything really does just work off a procedure.
Right.
And presumptions and assumptions. So when they refer to that manual, they're trying to say, well, if we go by the manual, that protects everybody. That's general language that's already been talked about.
It protects everyone, or it exploits everyone?
Well, but again, they're trying to put things in there, and I think at that point they were talking about
Properties.
Yeah, basically, yeah, I don't remember exactly what that was, but it was pretty much, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right. Yeah.
And
I think we all thought that.
Yeah, but these attorneys are making it into a big deal because they weren't going by the book.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who were putting the ambiguous language in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you one other thing and before, I know you've got to go here quickly, but I was thinking about this today, watching this all over again, and I've thought about this whole idea about litigants should have a Bill of Rights. So, for example, if you're flying on an airplane and if an airline is late or whatever, I mean, there are the passenger's Bill of Rights, so to speak. And what I see going on in these courts, I think it's horrible what's happening to litigants. So, for instance, today, hearing was supposed to start at 1:30. It started at 2 o'clock. That's half an hour. Nobody's doing anything, but litigants are paying for their attorneys. And I would say conservatively, the amount of attorneys that were there probably close to $2,500 an hour. So that's about $1,250 just for the 1/2 hour of wait. And then she recesses at 2:45, says she's going to start again at 3, comes back at 3:30. Now I understand, I think that she was looking through some documents, but again, it's another 1/2 hour of people waiting, and the clock is running, the meter's running. You're still paying your money. And it seems someplace like that there's got to be some type of protection, because you've talked about collusion between attorneys and judges. And sometimes you have to wonder, are they letting the clock run on purpose? Because friends have friends back and make sure that friends make a lot of money.
I think that may be part of it, but that's not really what I have seen. What I have seen is this incompetence. And this is why, really, I even said this when we were down there testifying before the JJFI committee, is people are always going to fight. You're always going to have clients. But now the courts are overbooked. The attorneys are overworked. They're coming in there flying by the seat of their pants.
Right.
Okay. And maybe they're not incompetent. So let's not say they're incompetent. They're just overworked, and they don't have time to spend time on these cases. What really needs to happen is a person takes care of their own case, pro se. These judges don't like that because it does mess up their everyday operating procedure. But I felt like every one of these attorneys, even his appellate attorney, did wrong. You need to be sending notices. You need to be sending communications back and forth so that when you come down to a hearing, you're going to hammer out a few specific things.
Right.
I mean, it was like we all just showed up and got out of bed late today and just, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah.
That's how the judge even perceived it.
Yeah.
And I felt like today, all three attorneys dropped the ball on the judge. And the judge, she did her best today, I really felt like. Now,
right.
I think she created the environment that put her in the spot she was in today. She's not,
She doesn't have clean hands either.
She doesn't have clean hands.
Right.
But there were no clear issues to talk about that somebody said, you know what, I sent this document, this notice on these specific issues, and nobody could explain them.
Right.
So this is where we're at.
Right.
Now this kind of leads into why they're even going to a new trial. And we haven't really laid out the whole facts of this case. We're just kind of speaking off the cuff of what happened today.
Right. Anyway, so, but again, you noticed the difference from the first time you were here versus today with 8 court watchers.
Absolutely, and that's probably what I would focus on. When you get court watchers in there, and then you get an appellate attorney, because these everyday attorneys are just, I don't have words for what scum they are. They're scumbags who are incompetent. They do not protect the record for appeal. They don't put the right stuff on the record. They don't go against the judge because they are working in these courts day after day. That's where they make their money.
I agree with everything that you're saying, and I think that the problem that I've seen with a lot of people is nobody knows how bad the courts are until you actually go in there and watch it. Is that a correct assessment?
It absolutely is correct. And there was another lady here that you may be speaking with, but she showed up today. Other people who've been screwed around in this same courthouse in Collin County, Texas, have been here. The other court watchers are people who've been screwed around and taken advantage of, having the kids stolen or paychecks or everything they worked for. So that's why we're all here. And I think it's a testament when you have 8-9 people.
And 2 newspapers.
3.
3, yeah, 3, okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You don't have to have a assumed name. You are your own.
Got it.
That's the beauty of the First Amendment.
Absolutely it is.
But and on a good note, you know what? That's what's good about these courts becoming so oppressive. People do band together and say, "Wait a minute, something has to change," because we have so neglected our duties for a very long time. Because we want to outsource it to other people to take care of what's really our responsibility.
That's right. That's right. Brandon, thanks so much. Happy anniversary.
All right. Thank you.
Talk
Jeff.
with you later. Thanks, Brandon.